The Amarillo family is speaking out nearly 3 weeks after a 20-year-old mother was killed near Alamo Park.
News Channel 10's Alyssa Spangler spoke with a family who says they don't want her death to be in vain.
On May the 4th, the family of Ariana Nicole Estrada went from experiencing love and happiness to tragedy and heartache. Amarillo police say around 1:30 that morning, 21-year-old David Allen Crowder brutally gunned down Estrada while she sat helpless in the passenger seat of a car. Crowder was not only an ex-boyfriend of Ariana's, but the father of her 4-year-old son, Kai.
You know, not only did he lose his mom, but he's lost everything now.
They loved each other.
She was his world and he was hers.
Mm-hmm. That was the love of his life. It'll always be the love of his life.
Ariana's family says they are devastated by the loss of the young mother, and their mission is now to provide support for victims of domestic violence and prevent this kind of tragedy from happening again.
Shortly before 1:30 a.m. on May 4th, 2025, Amarillo police officers patrolling near South Mirror Street and I-40 heard multiple gunshots in rapid succession. Minutes later, shell casings scattered across the roadway confirmed a violent encounter. Hours after the shots, a vehicle carrying 20-year-old Ariana Nicole Estrada arrived at a hospital. She was pronounced dead from multiple gunshot wounds. While others in the vehicle were uninjured, investigators quickly identified 21-year-old David Allen Crowder, Estrada's boyfriend and the father of her young son, as a suspect. Police allege Crowder followed Estrada before the shooting and arrested him without incident, charging him with murder and setting bond at $750,000. Crowder's criminal history included prior assaults. As detectives pieced together the sequence of events, unanswered questions about prior incidents, systemic response, and weapons access began to surface, prompting ongoing investigation and legal scrutiny. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds. Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Ariana Nicole Estrada was a 20-year-old woman born on February 11th, 2005, in Amarillo, Texas. She was a mother of a young child, a son named Kai Allen Estrada, who was approximately 4 years old at the time of her death. Ariana was known within her community as a devoted mother and a central figure in her child's life. Her family described her as responsible and consistent in her role as a parent, and she maintained social connections with friends and neighbors who relied on her presence. While not widely recognized outside Amarillo, within her local context, she was a known figure whose routines and social ties were well established. Her daily life involved balancing parenting responsibilities with social and familial engagements, reflecting a structured, everyday existence in her community. The individual charged in connection with Ariana's death was David Allen Crowder, aged between 20 and 21. Crowder was identified as Ariana's former boyfriend and the father of her child, Kai. Reports indicate that their relationship was punctuated by episodes of physical and verbal conflict. Prior to the shooting, Crowder had a documented history of violence, including charges of assault causing bodily injury and domestic violence. At the time of the incident, he was reportedly on probation, a factor that would later become relevant in evaluating potential intervention measures by authorities. Crowder's interactions with Ariana were characterized by a combination of prior domestic incidents, unresolved disputes, and custody-related tensions. The combination of personal connection and documented violent behavior established a context in which law enforcement identified him as a high-risk individual in relation to Ariana's safety. On May 4, 2025, in the early morning hours, Ariana was inside a Dodge Durango, traveling with companions, when the sequence of events leading to her death began. According to police reports, Crowder pursued the vehicle in another vehicle, initiating a high-risk confrontation that escalated into a fatal encounter. During the pursuit, the driver of the Dodge Durango lost control, resulting in a crash. The crash alone created a dangerous scenario, But the situation escalated further when Crowder allegedly discharged an AR-style rifle, firing multiple rounds into the passenger side of the vehicle, where Ariana was seated. The use of a high-powered weapon in a residential area created a scenario of extreme risk, not only to the targeted individual but to bystanders and the vehicle occupants. The bullet struck Ariana multiple times, resulting in fatal injuries. After the shooting, Crowder fled the immediate scene and was subsequently located at a family residence. Authorities reported that he was arrested without incident. The weapon allegedly used in the attack was found concealed nearby, indicating deliberate post-incident behavior designed to obstruct immediate evidence collection. Law enforcement's recovery of the weapon, coupled with eyewitness accounts and forensic evidence from the vehicle, provided a direct link between Crowder and the fatal incident. Police processed the scene extensively, documenting shell casings, bullet trajectories, and the condition of the Dodge Durango following the crash. Forensic analysis confirmed that multiple rounds entered the passenger side of the vehicle. Witness statements, including those from occupants of the vehicle and residents in proximity to the shooting, corroborated the sequence of events, including the pursuit by Crowder and his apparent intent to target Ariana specifically. Investigators also reviewed Crowder's prior legal history, noting the existing probation status and past charges, which were considered in evaluating motive and potential patterns of violent behavior. Law enforcement categorized the incident as a premeditated act of violence against a known individual. The procedural response included documenting all physical evidence, collecting testimony, and securing the suspect and weapon. Crowder's arrest of the family residence concluded the immediate investigative phase, while subsequent steps included formal charges, interrogation, and preparation for legal proceedings. Following his arrest, Crowder was charged with murder. Bond was set at $750,000. The legal process involved presenting evidence, including eyewitness accounts, forensic findings, and Crowder's prior history of domestic violence. A grand jury later indicted him for murder, and prosecutors indicated potential for additional charges, including weapons violations and charges related to endangerment of other occupants. The prosecution's case relied on establishing both the intent and the premeditation of the shooting, demonstrating that the incident was not accidental, but rather a targeted act directed toward Ariana. Defense considerations, including challenges to motive, potential claims of provocation, and disputes over evidence handling, were anticipated in pretrial proceedings. In the immediate aftermath, Ariana's family focused on the implications for her surviving son, Ariana Estrada. Community members were made aware of the circumstances through local reporting, and Ariana's death became a point of discussion in terms of domestic violence awareness and intervention measures. While the narrative was widely reported, the primary concern remained the legal process and the establishment of accountability for the fatal act. Family and community responses included public statements emphasizing safety, documentation of the victim's role in the community, and attention to legal outcomes regarding the suspect's prosecution. In the early hours of May 4th, 2025, law enforcement responded to multiple 911 calls reporting gunshots in the South Mirror Street area of Amarillo, Texas. Officers arrived to find evidence of a violent confrontation, including spent shell casings and signs of a vehicular pursuit. The scene immediately drew the attention of the Amarillo Police Department's homicide and crime scene units, who secured the area and initiated a systematic examination. The crime scene was processed in a methodical, forensic manner. Investigators documented the location of each shell casing, bullet trajectories, and points of impact both on the vehicle involved and surrounding areas. Measurements were taken to determine firing angles and potential locations of the shooter during the incident. Photographs and video recordings captured the scene from multiple perspectives. Officers also collected trace evidence, including fingerprints and any potential DNA samples, which were cataloged for later analysis. The process aimed to reconstruct the events of the shooting with precision and ensure that every piece of evidence could be used in subsequent legal proceedings. The vehicle in which the victim, Ariana Nicole Estrada, was riding was examined carefully. Bullet entry points and damage to the exterior and interior of the vehicle were documented, allowing investigators to establish that shots had been fired from outside the vehicle while it was in motion. The evidence indicated that the shooting was targeted, with specific intent to strike the victim inside the vehicle. Investigators interviewed passengers who had been in the vehicle with Estrada at the time of the shooting. Their statements confirmed that a male individual was following their vehicle before firing multiple rounds. These accounts describe the suspect's vehicle, actions during pursuit, and the sequence of events leading to crash. Residents in the nearby area were also questioned. Several reported hearing gunshots and observing a vehicle chase, providing additional context for the timing and trajectory of the events. The combination of eyewitness accounts from passengers and bystanders allowed investigators to reconstruct pursuit and establish a timeline of the shooting. Investigators also compiled statements regarding the suspect's behavior and possible prior interactions with the victim. These accounts later became important in establishing the suspect's motive and identifying patterns of prior conduct that would be relevant in court. Based on the combination of forensic evidence and eyewitness reports, Amarillo police were able to quickly identify the primary suspect. The connection was made through matching the suspect's vehicle description with observed behavior during the chase, corroborated by ballistic evidence from the shell casings recovered at the scene. The police confirmed that the suspect had direct ties to the victim, which narrowed the scope of the investigation and allowed for a focused pursuit. Law enforcement also noted that the suspect had a prior history of violence, which was documented through previous arrests and charges related to assault and domestic violence. These details were recorded for use in the prosecution's case. The police statements emphasized that the suspect's prior behavior and the evidence collected at the scene established a clear link between him and the fatal shooting. Following his arrest, the suspect, identified as David Allen Crowder, was booked on a murder charge. The court set his bond at $750,000, reflecting the severity of the offense and the risk to public safety. The booking process involved processing the suspect through the county jail system, documenting prior criminal history, and preparing the case for prosecution. A grand jury subsequently reviewed the case, including all available evidence, forensic reports, and witness statements. Crowder was indicted for murder, with potential additional charges under review. The grand jury proceedings focused on establishing that the suspect had intent to kill and that the act was premeditated. Prosecutors presented evidence of the chase, the firing of multiple rounds at a moving vehicle, and prior incidents of violence to support the indictment. The indictment marked a formal step in the judicial process, moving the case from investigation to prosecution. It also allowed the court to schedule hearings, arraignments, and pretrial proceedings. The indictment underscored the legal system's recognition of the severity of the crime and the need for a comprehensive presentation of evidence in court. The prosecution strategy focused on establishing a clear pattern of behavior and motive. Prior incidents of domestic violence were introduced as evidence to show a history of aggressive conduct and potential intent to harm the victim. Investigators and prosecutors emphasized the systematic nature of the shooting, demonstrating that the suspect actively pursued the victim before opening fire. Ballistic evidence, witness testimony, and forensic analysis of the crime scene were central to the prosecution's case. The goal was to show that the shooting was deliberate, targeted, and connected directly to the suspect, rather than a random act of violence. Legal arguments highlighted the suspect's previous encounters with law enforcement and the victim, providing context for the jury to understand the circumstances leading to the murder charge. In the aftermath of the shooting, Ariana Nicole Estrada's family issued public statements condemning violence and emphasizing the profound impact of her death on her young son and the broader community. The statements outlined the factual sequence of events, urging awareness and attention to domestic violence and the responsibilities of individuals with prior violent histories. The family also focused on the legal proceedings, noting the importance of ensuring that the suspect was held accountable for his actions. These statements served to clarify the fact of the case and communicate the family's expectations regarding justice and protective measures for survivors of domestic violence. Estrada's family engaged in efforts to highlight the prevalence of domestic violence fatalities in Amarillo. They emphasized the importance of protective measures, early intervention, and legal reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. Advocacy efforts included discussions with local authorities, community organizations, and media outlets, focusing on education about warning signs and legal resources for at-risk individuals. These efforts were factual and aimed at raising awareness, rather than eliciting emotional reactions. The focus remained on systemic improvements and ensuring that evidence-based strategies were implemented to reduce domestic violence risks. In addition to advocacy, community members and family organized fundraisers to cover burial costs and provide care for Estrada's young son. These efforts were structured, transparent, and focused on tangible support rather than public displays of grief. Memorial events included gatherings where the fact of the case and the timeline of events were discussed to inform attendees and reinforce awareness of the risks associated with domestic violence. Community participation was documented, with organizers emphasizing accountability, legal proceedings, and a continuation of support for those affected by the tragedy.
The Amarillo family is speaking out nearly 3 weeks after a 20-year-old mother was killed near Alamo Park.
News Channel 10's Alyssa Spengler spoke with a family who says they don't want her death to be in vain.
On May the 4th, the family of Ariana Nicole Estrada went from experiencing love and happiness to tragedy and heartache. Amarillo police say around 1:30 that morning, 21-year-old David Allen Crowder brutally gunned down Estrada while she sat helpless in the passenger seat of a car. Crowder was not only an ex-boyfriend of Ariana's, but the father of her 4-year-old son, Kai.
You know, not only did he lose his mom, but he's lost everything now.
They loved each other.
She was his world and he was hers.
That was the love of his life. It'll always be the love of his life.
Ariana's family says they are devastated by the loss of the young mother, and their mission is now to provide support for victims of domestic violence and prevent this kind of tragedy from happening again.
What we need to do is get the word out that this is a tragedy that happens a lot here in Amarillo. So all of these women have been killed by domestic violence within the last 3 years. Sharina Byington, Ileana Garza, Jessica Olmos, Brittany Torres, Cecilia Rodriguez, Ariana Nicole. They were all mothers, and they're all gone because I don't know. This is an epidemic in this city, and we need to find a way to give people the resource if they don't have to go through this, so that families don't have to go through this.
Court documents show that the murder wasn't Crowder's first alleged offense. In March of just last year, he was charged with assault causing bodily injury and violence against a family member.
But when the man offends repeatedly to the same person and he's still let out again with no consequences, and then he gets so mad that he kills her, and now he's in jail. But you still give him a bond to get out again.
The family believes stricter and better laws will help victims of domestic violence across the whole panhandle.
These threats need to be taken serious because these threats turn into this. We need better laws for these men and boys who think it's okay to lay hands on these girls and on these women. And they need to be held accountable before they pick up a weapon or get behind the wheel of a car or use their bare hands and take the life of someone. We don't want Ariana to be another statistic. We don't want her to be just another Hispanic girl from the barrio that got caught up in domestic violence and something happened to her. There should have been something put in place that would have prevented this. And that's what we want. We want to make sure that no other family goes through this, because seeing my family go through this, it's rough.
The family says multiple community events are already in the works, including a walk for domestic violence in July. There's also a GoFundMe set up to support Kai and a Facebook page where you can follow along in this case. That page is called Justice for Ariana. Reporting in studio, Alyssa Spengler, News Channel 10.
Fundraising initiatives were monitored to ensure that proceeds were directed toward concrete outcomes, including legal representation for the child and educational campaigns on domestic violence. The death of Ariana Nicole Estrada on May 4th, 2025, initiated a complex series of events that extended far beyond the immediate crime scene. Following the arrest of David Allen Crowder, authorities, legal representatives, and community members faced the immediate challenge of addressing both the consequences of the shooting and the structural gaps that may have contributed to it. In the weeks that followed, the focus shifted toward her surviving son, Kai Allen Estrada, the broader implications for domestic violence policy, and systemic questions about how prior warnings were handled by law enforcement and social services. Immediately after Ariana's death, her family mobilized to secure the well-being of her son, Kai. With the father of the child charged with murder, there was an urgent need to ensure a stable living environment. Estrada's relatives filed for full custody, presenting evidence of the ongoing risks associated with Crowder and highlighting the absence of a formal safety plan that might have protected both Ariana and her child. These efforts were not only procedural, but also intended to set a precedent for how children are protected in cases where a parent becomes a victim of domestic violence. Simultaneously, the family became advocates for changes to Texas law. Their efforts targeted areas including parental rights, protective orders, and domestic violence interventions. Specific proposals included more stringent enforcement of probation conditions for individuals with histories of violence, mandatory reporting and follow-up for domestic disturbance calls, and streamlined pathways for guardianship in cases where a custodial parent dies due to violence. Legal advocates noted that while the charges against Crowder were clear, gaps in existing statutes could potentially allow repeat offenders to act with minimal oversight. These advocacy initiatives quickly attracted attention at local and state levels, prompting discussions among lawmakers, social services, and community organizations regarding reforms that might prevent similar tragedies. Ariana Estrada's death was not an isolated event within the Amarillo community. Local law enforcement and domestic violence organizations compiled data indicating that the city had experienced a notable increase in fatal incidents related to intimate partner violence over preceding 5 years. Analysts emphasized patterns that included repeat offenders, incomplete risk assessments, and lapses in the enforcement of restraining or protective orders. The case of Ariana Estrada became a focal point in these discussions, illustrating the consequences when warning signs are either missed or inadequately addressed. Public reporting and community meetings highlighted the intersection of systemic failure and individual violence. Advocates presented statistics showing that women in similar age groups with young children were disproportionately affected. The community response included both formal public hearings and grassroots initiatives aimed at educating residents about domestic violence, recognizing early warning signs, and understanding the legal avenues available for protection. This situational context framed Ariana's death as a part of a larger societal concern, elevating the conversation from the specific incident to broader policy and safety considerations. The long-term implications of the Estrada case extended into discussions of public safety, early intervention, and judicial accountability. Following the case, Amarillo city officials and law enforcement agencies reviewed protocols for responding to domestic violence complaints. Internal audits examined how prior reports regarding Crowder were handled, identifying potential points of failure in communication between officers, probation services, and family members. Recommendations from these reviews included enhanced interagency collaboration, mandatory follow-up visits for high-risk individuals, and the implementation of predictive tools to identify potential escalations. In the legal sphere, prosecutors and policymakers began examining how similar cases could be expedited to minimize the window of risk for potential victims. This included evaluating the efficacy of pretrial monitoring, electronic tracking, and immediate restrictions on firearm access for individuals under investigation for domestic violence. By situating Ariana's death within this framework, officials sought to prevent replication of the factors that had contributed to the fatal incident. The case also stimulated scholarly and policy-oriented discussions about systemic patterns in domestic violence fatalities, emphasizing the role of preventive intervention over reactive measures. The investigation into Ariana Estrada's death continued to raise unresolved questions, some of which remain critical for understanding the full scope of the case. Investigators sought to uncover detailed insights into the relationship between Estrada and Crowder. Prior police reports, incident histories, and witness statements were examined to determine the frequency and severity of past conflicts. Investigative leads included analyzing communications between the two parties, reviewing social media activity, and identifying any prior threats that might have foreshadowed the shooting. Establishing the pattern of escalation was essential not only for prosecutorial purposes, but also for informing policy decisions regarding intervention in domestic disputes. A significant aspect of the post-event review centered on evaluating the legal system's response to Crowder's prior offenses. Analysts examined probation documentation, enforcement of protective orders, and interactions with social services to assess whether existing mechanisms failed to prevent the escalation to homicide. These reviews aim to identify specific points where the law could be more effective, including stricter monitoring of individuals with known histories of violence and more robust communication channels between agencies responsible for public safety. Further investigation included detailed interviews with passengers in Estrada's vehicle, neighbors who observed the chase, and other individuals with potential insight into the events leading up to the shooting. Witness accounts were critical for reconstructing the sequence of events, confirming the trajectory of the chase, and establishing the timeline of Crowder's actions. Analysts also examined inconsistencies and corroborations between statements to ensure a comprehensive and accurate representation of the incident. Finally, investigators conducted a thorough examination of how Crowder obtained the AR-style rifle used in the shooting. This process included tracing purchase records, potential private sales, and the existence of any legal gaps that facilitated the acquisition of the weapon. The objective was to determine whether regulatory oversight could have prevented access and to inform broader discussions about firearm access among individuals with violent histories. The aftermath of Ariana Nicole Estrada's death demonstrates a multi-layered narrative encompassing custody concerns, legal reform advocacy, systemic evaluation, and investigative rigor. While Crowder faced criminal prosecution, the broader implications of the case continue to influence policy debates, community awareness campaigns, and preventive strategies against domestic violence. The unresolved questions surrounding relationship dynamics, legal oversight, witness testimony, and weapon access highlight the necessity of both procedural diligence and structural reform. The Estrada case in its entirety underscores the intersection of individual tragedy and systemic responsibility, serving as a reference point for communities and lawmakers seeking to mitigate similar risks in the future. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.